for being here. Welcome back to Cardinal Rose Tarot. My name's Cynthia. This is my friend Nicole. We're just going to go ahead and get into it. I am not set up to be checking the chat very much. So if we get haters in the chat, it's really unfortunate that they're going to hang out in there for a while until I can get up and mute them. So that's just so you know. If you're someone that likes to participate in the chat, just know that I'm not going to be as active as a moderator, at least to start with today. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me as a guest.
I know, Nicole. This is awesome. Thank you. This is the first guest I've had that's not kitchen magic, hedge witchery type stuff. This is more conspiracy, tarot. Nicole and I go way back. I was going to pull a card first just to get us started to see what wants to come out for this topic, these conversations. Tarot's great at investigating power, with the royal court and everything, and it being a medieval sort of origin. Power was of concern in the medieval era.
As it remains today.
Yeah, totally, as always. So Nicole and I, let me just do this card first. What's going to be a good card that captures the themes for us today, for this collective exploration into crypto, conspiracy? We're going to get into some Epstein stuff because we've both been exploring that. We're both survivors, so we're probably not going to be going deep into detail because that can be kind of intense, right? Knight of Pentacles. So the Knight of Pentacles speaks to material concerns of the material world, whether who has what in terms of resources. And it's also, Knights represent communication as well in tarot. So communication about the material world that we're living in. I guess that's not a big stretch. That's what we're doing today. Thanks, tarot. Check. Yeah. So anyways, Nicole and I met, let's see, it would have been, I was trying to do the math, I think around 2007, maybe?
I think 2009.
Okay. At a community mental health clinic. We both worked there at the bachelor's level doing case management. I think by the time Nicole got hired, I was doing more dialectical behavior therapy team, which is DBT. I was doing the bulk of that work at that time, although I still did case management too. But we didn't really become friends until near the end, I think, of my time there. I was kind of standoffish. At Columbia River, I didn't really have a ton of friends there. I was just more focused on my work.
Yeah, I think that was accurate. We always had like a good energy, a good vibe, but didn't hang out really until a little bit later.
We both Scorpionic. Nicole's Scorpio sun sign, right?
Yeah, and I have a lot of, my houses are in Scorpio. I'm like very, very Scorpio.
Scorpio.
Not intense at all.
Yeah. And I have my Scorpio rising. So I remember when we were becoming friends, and I've told Nicole this many times, I remember thinking like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle it because we're both so intense. What if we can't handle our friendship? But we've done it going on whatever, 20 years now, I guess.
Yeah. And I think too, though, like there's like something to be said about someone who can like match that capacity.
For sure.
So
100%.
Yeah.
So the first topic is, I wanted to just touch base about singularity and about will, because we had a colleague, a coworker that worked with us. He's not here. You said he moved back to Ohio or something? Yeah. Okay. So he's gone. He doesn't live in this region anymore. But when we all worked together, he had this bumper sticker. What did it say? It was like
something about 2041.
See you in 2041 or something like that. And we were like, people would ask him about it and he would geek out if you asked him about this bumper sticker, and he'd be like, Roy that's what it was. Roy Kurzweil for president 2041 or something like that. Okay.
And at the time, Will seemed very, very fringe. Of course, like all this time later, you know, time has vindicated Will, because you know, if anything, the singularity is approaching like faster than 2041. But back in 2009, you know, we just kind of were like, oh, okay, Will, you
Well,
know.
yeah, and then this dude's name, like, I can never even know how to say his name, like Ray Kurzweil or Roy Kurzweil or whatever.
Starts with a K.
So I remember the day I said, "So Will, who is that?" And he was like, "I'm glad you asked." And it's just
5 hours later.
So you pulled it up on your phone, the actual definition of singularity.
Yeah, so like the idea of singularity, and I think there's different ideas. People have different conceptualizations, but broadly, it's when artificial intelligence or technology sort of becomes autonomous beyond human control, and then at some point offsets or surpasses human intelligence. So, of course, when I first heard this concept in 2009, it was before artificial intelligence was really conceptually part of our culture. And, now, of course, it seems very prescient as we're sort of seeing how quickly things...
I have a memory of around maybe the last year of working at Columbia River for me, which would have been around 2010, I think. There had just been the first art simulated, like a computer made this and it was an image, right? And I remember just being fascinated. I was like, no way, like this is computer generated art. Like it was super mind blowing, right? I wasn't in any way like, why are we having computers make art? Like, no, like I wasn't in any, like everybody's saying now, right? But like, yeah.
It was so nascent then.
Totally.
And it was not as consolidated in terms of like financial power.
100%. And I remember Will saying, when the singularity comes, none of us understand, including the person who has conceived of the singularity, this mathematician. No, but none of us know what it is going to look like. He just has done these calculations and calculated when it's going to happen based on his understanding as a mathematician and a physicist. Maybe I don't really know what kind of math he practices. But I heard recently he was asked about it, and he said, I need to find where he said this if it's even real, that he feels like if anything, his prediction, it's speeding up. Like it's going to be sooner than 2041 or whatever.
I think that makes sense, because if we look at like any technological feat in society, and I'm just going to kind of constrict it to like our sort of like Western society for the sake of this, but that it looks like technology evolves faster, and then it gets it spreads its network effect faster. So like, first you have the telephone, and then you have the TV, and then if you look at internet and like how long it takes for that to evolve and adapt and how many people get connected to it, and then
and that was part of his theory, was that because it happens exponentially, it's going to reach this event horizon where we can't grasp what happens at that exponential integer or interval or something, because it's beyond our capacity to grasp.
I think that makes sense. I think that's true, and I think it like the technology itself is evolving so much faster. So like and I'm not a technologist whatsoever.
Yeah, me neither.
I am an elder millennial that functions more like a baby boomer half the time when it comes to technology.
Same here.
But at the same time, I almost feel like as a survival necessity, like I need to understand these things, and whether or not I ethically like it or not, it does seem to be an inevitability at how fast like the first iteration of say like ChatGPT was, or some of these like AI tools that are mainstreaming, to what their capacity is doing now, to what they're anticipated to do. The speed in which the technology evolves is just exponential. It's scaling so fast.
Yeah, it's nuts. And it feels like time is speeding up. Like, that's what it feels like to me. Like, I was just saying the other day, I was having a conversation with my client. We were talking about that. Like, everything feels like it's going faster and faster and faster. And I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm sitting here in a moment thinking about all these things, especially if I'm on my phone. And it's like, I'll have this moment of feeling like I'm experiencing the multiverse, like in the moment, where it's like, I'm passing through a bunch of realities all at the same time, like timelines, they say in the tarot and divination world. You're jumping timelines, but
Well, and I think that's also by design, right? Like, we have everything at our fingertips, so we're expected to respond to the text message right away. We're expected to respond to our boss right away because we have this phone. And then the idea is the more that we're on social media or a Google search engine, like the longer they keep us there, the better. So I think that there is a sense of like, keep going, you're gonna miss something, and that's
a great point.
Like, I think it's very much by design.
Yeah, the fear of missing out, totally. I didn't even think of that.
And then there's also like competition, right? Like, we used to have like long form news and journalism, but now you have to compete with a 24-hour audience. And that's also like, as our technology has advanced, things are faster because we're not just like waiting for the newspaper to come in the morning or the radio announcement, but we're refreshing our feeds over and over and over again. So I think that then the competition comes and says, well, we want our advertising dollars, so we need to get this content out, and it becomes sort of like, how fast can you do this?
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, like, tell me, because I didn't know until just recently that Will is the one that got you into Bitcoin, because that's it. And I didn't know that, like, because that's why I wanted to talk to Nicole, is because Nicole is my gateway into Bitcoin and crypto. Because to me, and like, I think it's probably true for a lot of women and maybe other people on the left, like, it's this world that seemed like it felt like cornered right away by bros that then took on all this weird exclusive language and culture that I was like, even now on X, I had to get on X because I had to make a deal with the devil because of my NFTs.
I'm on it too, but only because that's where the best information on Bitcoin is.
Totally.
Like,
and so I don't remember where I was going with that, but
my origin.
Even now when I'm trying to track just and promote my NFT launch and all that, when I'm in the NFT world on X, I don't fucking get it. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand what people are talking about. I don't know what they're saying. There are all these in jokes, and that's by design. It's the whole club structure of like, let's make this a club, create exclusivity. That kind of bugs me as an artist, but I also get it. It's part of it. That's why I wanted to do it. It was because it's like, I need my come up at this point in my life, so I'm going to try it. As a visual artist, I'm going to try to enter this world and see if I can't make something happen for myself. But I had to do a lot of ethical stuff around it as well because of the impact it's having on the environment. Pretty much every single leftist in my world that I've said I'm making an NFT has something to say. They're like, really? That's interesting. I didn't realize that you would be, and they want it. It's like they're in this mode of like wanting to catch me in something, like, oh, you're not as pure as you're not as virtuous as you, whatever. And it's like, yeah, I live in the fucking world.
Well, and I think virtue is the word that I really want to pull out, because I think that like that idea of virtue is sort of like, in my opinion, what kind of was to the detriment of the left with Bitcoin. Just to answer your initial question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, I'm here to follow all the tracks. Will, our community mental health friend, who's gonna laugh when he.
I know, you should send him a
Will
link.
Doesn't know that he is the origin story for this, but he first educated me about it, and Will, like myself, I think is one of those people that if he goes in a rabbit hole, you can trust that he has uncovered everything and like really has grasped it. So he was really explaining Bitcoin to me in a way. And then he actually was like, here are the people to follow. And now spend the next 100 hours like learning. And so that really is what happened, is like at first when Will described this to me, I think Bitcoin was at like $6,000, and I listened to him and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I think I bought like $200 worth at the time, just to be like, well, let's just see what happens. And then I watched it go down to 3,000, as one does with Bitcoin. And then it shot back up to 6,000 and then 11,000. And that's when I was like, well, wait a minute. Because I just kind of sat with that like teeny amount just to kind of like see what was happening. And then, I saw Will again. So some time had spanned. And that's when I went back with a much more open mind. Like, okay, I've seen it drop 50%. But now it's doubled, and so I really was like, I'm very curious. I think I put in like another a small amount, not a lot, just to kind of learn. And then it went to 13 and then 16. And then I think I just really dug deep during the pandemic. And what happened was I kind of came in without any prior knowledge, and I quickly realized this is such a white male libertarian bro culture. And at the same time, I really saw and still believe that Bitcoin was an inevitability. And given that there's only 20 million, and I'm seeing that this is likely an inevitability, and that given that it's scarce and I think it could become a global reserve currency, I became increasingly concerned that it seemed to be like really right-wing libertarian men owning it, and then, you know, potentially more like dictatorship governments and things like that. And so that's when I just started myself to just as a pandemic project, I started to realize like progressives are going to miss out. And like right now we have this opportunity where the banks don't own it yet, the institutions don't own it yet, like our governments aren't owning it yet to our knowledge, to really like be like, hey, like really like shake people up to be like, this is what's going on, this is where our direction's going. And like if we don't get involved, the scarce asset that is going to like dominate like the next century, like, and potentially like really change our power structure and enrich a whole new population of people. Like if the left doesn't get on this, we are potentially ceding like decades and decades in the next century of like economic and political power, because we're sort of looking at this and questioning the virtue of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we don't question the virtue of like the banking system or the dollar, which is, you know,
I mean, anarchists do, which is how that's where it intersected for me, because you helped me open my mind to it. I was already open to some of it through Will, I think, and then through you especially. My ex was really into it, but to me, that was just more men being interested in something. Like, I'm interested in a lot that men are interested in too, but it was exclusive in that way that we were saying. And you helped me feel like, well, and it's so cute too, I think. Not cute, but I don't know, not to be dissing ourselves, but like, I think back and it just makes me laugh. Like, you loaned me a book.
Oh yeah, I did. Like it's so sad. I'm like, how quaint a book.
I know. It's an actual print book, and your notes were in it. And you're like, here, it's about Bitcoin. Read this, and I read it, and I tried to, and I had a better understanding, so it opened my mind up. I remember being here in this very room, talking about it, and I decided I'm going to do it. I bought Bitcoin that day, and you were like, well, you think you can't understand this? Have you heard of NFTs? And I was like, And you started talking about their non-fungible token. You were educating me about it, and I'm like, like I did not understand. I remember you describing it, and I couldn't get my head around it. And now I understand it more, but I didn't know what you were like. There's these apes. I'm like, like it just was so abstract or something.
Well, I think that's partly what made me want to sort of like speak so much about it, was seeing that there's such an information gap, right? And like when I kind of went into the space, I was like, well, there's definitely no queer people. Well, I shouldn't say none. There are a few. But, you know, I wasn't feeling like I'm seeing a lot of women or non-binary people or just like working and middle class people. And so I really felt like that's kind of where like I saw this opening of, like, as what you were saying, it was like, this is just this thing that these guys like. So I'm not paying attention. This doesn't sound like for me. But then when it comes from someone who like shares your politics or some gender overlap, there's I think a little bit more ability to hear it. And I think like, unfortunately, I think that because it became such a polarizing issue, like people really just like put their stake in the ground and that was it. So because it was feeling like such a right libertarian project, Elizabeth Warren, you know, whether by genuine like ethical reasoning or political posturing, was like, well, I'm against it, right? And then it became, you know, and honestly that changed. I was an Elizabeth Warren 2020 primary voter. I loved her, and kind of watching that play out actually changed my view of her to some degree. And I just remember thinking the left and I'm gonna say not the left in this case, because I think out of pragmatism, like, I want to see Democrats win. I have a lot of problems with the Democratic Party, and many of them need to leave. But in any case, coming into an election, I recognize, not just Bitcoin, which I separate from the rest of crypto, but the crypto lobby as a whole. The writing was on the wall to me that they're going to be the next NRA in terms of their money is going to shift our political atmosphere, who gets elected, who is going to have tens of millions of attack ads against them, who's going to be propped up. And I really felt like, the risk of that early Democratic posturing meant we got wiped out in the election for many reasons. Some of that was being really stupid on Gaza and not standing up enough to Israel. Some of it was the successful weaponizing of, transgender for everyone. Some of it was just people vote against their economic interests because racism prevails. But another reason was how much money that crypto lobby went in there. And I think I remember seeing this and trying to like scream the alarm in whatever way I could as just, a random person with no interest in like social media infamy. But then I did kind of.
Well, yeah, you mentioned to me recently, you said something, the way you phrased it, I was like, God, it's so true. Like, you were like, the left is just like written it off. Like, they don't pay attention, they ignore it. Yes. And to me, it's stupid. I agree. It's totally stupid I get it. Some of it is like annoying, the culture around it and stuff, because I'm annoyed with it. And I'm pretty much sure that most of my artist friends, especially visual artists, but even performing artists and stuff, I think they're not down with the fact that I've done this. I think they feel a little bit betrayed because I'm trying my hand at NFTs. Like, I think they're surprised at me a little bit. Like, what?
I think that's so misdirected. Like, yeah, to be fair, like, I do think that I'm going to be honest, I think 99% of the cryptos out there are scams, and they're just sort of clever schemes to have, to make money. They're not decentralized. You can see it all over, yeah. So that's why, like, I really specify that Bitcoin is totally decentralized, and I separate that from crypto. I think there are legitimate, like, just to like honor that, there are legitimate concerns. We have Trump coin now, right? Mm-hmm. And I really think it becomes even harder to be a leftist. Like, I myself am much quieter about it because there's so much association with like the Trump boys and like their Trump coin and just a lot of weird shit.
Even just the AI imagery is just fucking gross looking. So much of it is just weird and gross looking and not interesting. And then someone will decide, I'm going to launch NFTs with these slight variations, and just speak on a whim, whatever. And I don't know. I'm annoyed by that because I'm actually an artist. Like, I'm serious. I'm going to do this sort of smaller collection to create, because for me as a printmaker, the scarcity aspect of like minting a limited edition, for example, that's right in line with printmaking, because printmaking is like making one image on a block, but then a series, right? And so editioning images, to me, I was like, well, once I grasped that that's sort of what NFTs are, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. But even printmakers, I think, are a little bit like, feel like I'm betraying my fine art training or something I found a tiny handful of fine artists that mint on like Wearable and stuff, and we hang around each other on Blue Sky because it's like at least there's somebody. Yeah. But I felt like I was coming out in secret to even say on Blue Sky, like I went and started an X account because I know this is an NFT hate space. Yeah, but I launched I'm launching an NFT collection, so I need to promote it.
There's definitely a lot of stigma. But I think it's interesting because like a lot of the work that you're doing is around alchemy, right? You're talking about a lot of alchemy and like, the physicality, say, of gold. Mm-hmm. And something that I think is really interesting about your work is like it is central in like this like physical resource of gold, like this.
And thanks for bringing that up.
It's in the digital space, and I think that's really interesting because I think that speaks to that tension of, we've got this thing that's very much rooted in the physical, but then also being entered in this digital space. And so I think that is a tension that, you're hearing this like critique of it, but also like your work itself is sort of, in a way, pointing to that, not necessarily pointing to that tension, but maybe bridging those things. And
I think it does, and I didn't even intend that necessarily, because I included metal in all of the images for the NFTs, and the creation story of my NFTs is going to launch here in a couple days. It's going to launch as a premiere on my channel, so watch for that, because I go into this, what Nicole's talking about. But they incorporate metal, all of them, because I was interested in the alchemical understanding of transforming base metals into gold. And my deck is about creation itself, and metals and creation and the earth and all that, right? So it's wild that you even brought up metals, and like a commenter in my live stream yesterday was like, invest in gold and precious metals like Ron DeSantis said. And I was like, you're not probably going to feel very welcome here if you're a Ron DeSantis fan. But like, that's how these worlds all are like intersecting, and like all the lines are so blurry anymore. And, like,
I mean, and my feeling too, like, is to some degree, and like when I was younger, like especially like in my 20s, like I had this example of like, I was like, capitalism is bullshit, and the credit card and how we get scored is bullshit, I'm opting out. Mm-hmm. Well, all that did was like screw my credit report, right? Mm-hmm. My score got really low, and then I had to like make up for that like decision, because the game is rigged. Mm-hmm. And so me just opting out, well, shit, I need that game because I'm gonna need a car loan, because I can't afford a full car, and my score matters. And then I kind of had to backtrack and be like, okay, well, I don't love this game, but like I exist within a world where I need to survive it. And so I kind of also feel like, if you hate Bitcoin, you shouldn't. If you hate crypto, you shouldn't necessarily. But like at the end of the day, it's also like, if something is an inevitability, if that's where our future is going, I feel like there's also just a sense of like, let's understand it.
Yeah.
Let's engage it. Or like, yeah, it's completely sexist and homophobic in a lot of those spaces where they're like, you know, Bitcoin for everyone. It's very much like all lives matter, right? Because it's so diluted. You know, and then you get into the space, it's not really for everyone, like, you know, but it is. But and I also just feel though that like there's to some degree like a resistance in joining it. Because if you're only seeing,
well, I felt the resistance to join it, because I had the idea, but then I got overwhelmed with all of the implications and what does it mean, and so I had set it all aside and then picked it back up recently as I got re-inspired. But yeah, I don't know, I lost where I was going with that, but just that I don't remember what I pinged off what you said.
Well, just that like to some degree, if the world is going in a certain direction, like there's can be a lot of natural resistance to that, and it's like I have a lot of natural resistance to the way the world is working right now. But then also, like if you're just like I did, like, well, I'm just opting out of my credit cards, and then they just all close on me, and then my score goes down. I kind of like cut off my nose to spite my face,
right? And
so I think to some degree, like you could say, well, whether you're neutral, positive, or negative about these things, to some degree, if this is the way our world is working, then like to some degree maybe you have to kind of figure those pieces out, or like you join it to change it. And I mean, there's different arguments to that in terms of, you know, just completely opting out, and that might make sense for some people. But to just say, okay, well, like this is this new ideology, and we've determined that like the new orthodoxy is you have to completely reject all of these emerging technologies that are going to be like,
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's just like, it's just that to me is no different than, that's just a bunch of mind control on the other spectrum, I guess, in a way.
I mean, I think that it's dogmatic.
Yeah. It's
dogmatic. And here's my feeling. It's like, if there is somebody who's done their research, like I'll just take Bitcoin because I'm much more knowledgeable about that. But so many people have so many dumb things to say about it, or they like read an article and have determined this is bad, but they don't understand it.
Yeah.
I can't really take that seriously.
Yeah.
I think that if somebody's done their homework, they've done their research, and they can come back with like, here's my critical concern, I can engage in that, and there might be some valid things to discuss, some good discourse there. But I think it's that reflexive rejection, that automatic, oh, you're doing that, that I think can be self-limiting.
Yeah.
Especially because my whole thing with Bitcoin too is like, if this is going to be potentially something that replaces gold over time, which I think it will, or at least be alongside it as a safe haven. then in my mind, we want to get as many people like you and I to have some of it. And we had these years where we could front run the banks, we could front run hedge funds. Like now we have BlackRock owns it. We have all these ETFs and all the major financial industry is coming into it. And then I just think about, to what degree was Elizabeth Warren, sort of the darling of the left, paternalistic, and scaring people away from it? Because like if people just took their like $1,200 like pandemic inflationary money and just put it in Bitcoin and did nothing else, I can't remember the math. I don't know what the math is on that right now, but they'd be up several 100%. And like, and you know, again, there's the volatility. There's obviously a risk that if you have no health literacy, you could get hurt. But to just say outright, don't do this thing, it actually, in some ways, I feel like hurt people. Because like for myself, I took the money that normally I would have had to pay my student loans on, but I had to pause. So I just started to take the money that would have gone to pay off my loan and put it into Bitcoin.
Well, you got me on that track too, because once you convinced me, I told a lot of women, I was like, buy some crypto, do what Nicole told me to do, but just buy some.
Yeah,
like
and it's not financial advice, and always just make sure you have your cushion and that you could just not touch it for 5 years. Like there's definitely areas where like if you don't know what you're doing, you can get hurt. Like if you buy at the top and then it crashes, like, so you want to do your research, but to outright tell people don't do it. If I had listened to the 99.9% of people I know who thought it was crazy, and I didn't do that, I would actually be in a much more anxious position right now. Like in no way am I one of those people that like bought Bitcoin at $2 and now I'm like have generational wealth. Not at all. I'm somebody who's gonna have to work until retirement. I don't know that I'll ever be able to afford to retire, right? I'm someone who, but like I saw this little window where I felt like I know something that a lot of other people don't know yet, and I believe in it, and I'm going to put my money in there. But and that has benefited me to a great deal. And I think if people had, so there's also the side of to what degree to be sort of like economically hurt people by telling them to absolutely not do it, and then cede the narrative and the control to the right.
Totally. I feel like we just nailed all of that. I don't feel like we left anything out that I can think of that I wanted to talk about, other than now I wanted to go into the Epstein like intersection, because there was that tweet that you sent me that was like, holy shit. And I retweeted it. I was like, oh my God, this is fucking insane. And then it turns out maybe it was
I'm not sure if it was where the origin story of like Epstein starting Bitcoin came from. That's inaccurate in terms of that, like that happening, but
you have to kind of fill me in. So I've started following the files, but I also was doing this whole other track on my channel that was around white supremacist organizing, and I ended up going down that, and I've gotten a little bit derailed from keeping up with the files because they're so voluminous. There's so many.
Yeah.
It's like I don't even know. But the repressed memories thing that you came across, I think we should talk about, and whatever else too.
Sure. Well, first, like, just to throw out, nothing that we're going to discuss is going to be graphic or about like essay stuff, unless it's sort of a broad thing. But one thing that sort of, I mean, there's so many different threads to pull, right? But something that I think was interesting is to put it like fucked up, to just be blunt about it, was seeing sort of how many connections to very like prominent medical professionals and influential, like nationally renowned medical professionals were in that field. So for example, there is an OBGYN, I can't remember his name, but apparently many of the medical students today that still like are training to be OBGYNs were trained by this guy. This guy was on retainer with Epstein. So we have like, I wish I could remember the name of this guy, but if you look up like OBGYN Epstein files, you guys can look that up for yourself. He's, I don't want to get into the details, but he is sending, these young girls, and not fucking young women. I cannot handle this whole young women bullshit. Yeah. Girls, to this OBGYN. And so the same guy who is responsible for like the majority of like the curriculum and the theory behind like OBGYN as a medical practice is the same guy that sex trafficking victims were getting like funneled to him. So
which I yeah.
And then the other piece that I saw was I also forgot her name, but there's this one woman, I think her last name starts with a T, who sort of like popularized that she's a doctor. I don't know if she's an MD or a PsyD, but she popularized the theory that there can be false memories. Like the idea that somebody could think that they had a really sexually abusive childhood, but somehow those were implanted memories or fake memories, or they think they're real but they're not. And then that same woman was a witness with Maxwell, as well as in the Weinstein files, and then, or not the Weinstein, just the Weinstein case. And then if people were searching her name and she came up in the files, I cannot independently verify like what level of connection she has.
Yeah, that's, to me, when you mentioned that, my brain went, because I was just talking about on here the satanic panic of the late 90s and late 80s into the 90s and whatnot. There was a lot of talk about that. It was being covered on talk shows, and people were talking about repressed memories of satanic ritual abuse. I specifically had more than one client at Columbia River where we met with those memories and that story from people who worked in law enforcement, from people who were involved in churches, from people, and my clients are terrified to even say this out loud because they know it makes them sound crazy. They know it made them sound paranoid. I remember struggling to believe what they were saying because I was like, we would know. If there was this kind of mass conspiracy about satanic ritual abuse, we would know. But I didn't want to treat my clients like I didn't believe them. It was a big dilemma for me. I remember my boss saying, why don't you believe them? And I needed a boss to do that. And I'm still to this day so grateful because he's one of the few people in mental health that actually believed people's stories at that time.
And maybe still.
Yeah, and I remember being like, thank you, because I don't want to feel like my clients are delusional. Because clearly they're traumatized by this. It's obvious. Like, they're not making up a story. They're not sitting down in here and making this up. The trauma symptoms are all real. So I don't know how to make sense of this. That's why I went to my boss with it. I was like, I don't know what to do. And I'm so grateful to him. Neil, wherever you are, thank you. I think he's in California. But yeah, I really am grateful to him because he was like, why do you think that people would, across different sections of society, the country, people who've never met, why do you think that they would all be having these similar stories? Why do you think that is? And he just challenged me to be like, maybe consider that there isn't some weird other explanation, but what everybody is saying, and that it's true, and we don't know. And now look what we're finding out.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild because another thing, the thing that I've been grappling with that's wild to me is obviously we all thought QAnon was nuts, and fringe, and many of them, to be fair, probably are nuts. But then what I found out was that QAnon came out of that 4chan. Well, it was the Epstein network that funded 4chan that created the QAnon. And so that it was like, well, wait a minute. So what I'm hearing is that QAnon was actually sort of like cultivated through the Epstein network in order to create a bunch of conspiracy theorists that are going to sound so unhinged that no one is going to believe them and they're going to dismiss them outright.
Yes,
but actually we're giving them parallel things to what's actually happening, but now they just seem so crazy that no one's ever going to believe it. And so like even saying out loud, like, okay, so like here isn't this mass conspiracy about QAnon being about Epstein to hide the pedophile ring, then it's like, then I sound unhinged, right? And that's by design. It's like a psyop.
Exactly.
Because like the moment you start to say these things, you sound crazy. And like I myself have to laugh because I'm like gender QAnon in terms, but but then I'm going down these tracks. I'm like, well, Michael Jackson was framed and Stanley Kubrick was killed because they wanted to edit 22 minutes of the video, and then I can just go down these things and like, well, now I sound that way, and I think so. Like then it's sort of
I think you're fucking so onto something, because it's the whole reason that the left, because we all, everybody on the left is like, we're the reasonable ones. We don't buy into this. And so it makes sense. It was the most brilliant grift on us to do that, because of course everybody's like, whatever, Pizzagate, rolling our eyes, all of that.
Well, then it looked like pizza itself is a key. Like they use different words, like shrimp, which is believed to shrimp. If you go through the files, it's supposed. And again, just saying it out loud, it sounds crazy, but this is all it like. We can in the files.
They're totally, because another content creator that I follow, she's a crime victim family member. Her name's Cresha Easton. It was around this insane Mormon. That's the whole other angle, that the Mormon church is all involved in this shit.
Oh, I didn't know that part. I'm not surprised with that. I didn't know.
Straight up, it's very white supremacist, the Mormon church is. And so, as she was delving into the keywords thing, egg is another one apparently. So I need to go now watch her video, because she did a breakdown around the keywords being used, egg, because the crimes that were committed against her loved ones, the red rums, sorry, I'm still learning to watch my language on YouTube. Those words were being used in the people, amongst the text messages of the people who ultimately committed crimes against her family. And so she's investigating as a crime victim's family member, right, from these horrible Mormon crimes that were committed against children. And these keywords were a part of these text exchanges in her case. And so it's just nuts. Like,
yeah,
it's like, where is the bottom?
There is no bottom.
Fuck.
We're not, so shrimp apparently is code for presumably baby and eating babies.
Okay.
Which goes back to the white supremacy thing in a way, because, and I have to admit that I only recently learned this. This is not part of history that I'm embarrassed to admit that I knew. But we're seeing more and more about like them eating babies. And something that I just learned while kind of researching that was that this eating babies is like as old as our country. And that when there was the slave trade, babies were considered like they could be bought for like exponentially more than other enslaved bodies and people, and so it was something reserved for the luxury class to be able to purchase that baby. And then again, like I'm fully cognizant that I sound absolutely batshit crazy to
these
somebody.
Are the things in the files.
But these are all things that are like substantiated. But I think by design, part of the way that you can get away with these things is because anyone who were to be like, oh hey, they're eating babies, like they're gonna test them.
People have known, right? Like Get Out, the people that made the movie Get Out, they had to have known some of this, right? Like I can't. And other movies too, like you brought up Stanley Kubrick and like all
Eyes Wide Shut seems to be very much based on this, and that was one conspiracy that like kind of I went down a rabbit hole recently, which is that Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut seems to be very much about this elite class of the Epstein class.
And Cresha Easton, again, to name that other, she's a content creator, but she also, was deeply impacted by this shit personally, right? Aside from, she started creating content to investigate. She was like, what the fuck is this bizarre world that I've been traumatized by? And so now she's investigating. But sorry, I lost my train again. Why did I bring that back up?
There's just like so many threads. It's like how do we track this? But the Kubrick thing, he had the rights to Final Cut. I don't know if that triggered.
It was the Kubrick thing is what brought me back to why I brought her up again, because she was uncovering all this stuff in the files about fucking Robert Redford. So I'm like, I gotta go look into that now.
I didn't know about that. With the Kubrick one, it looks like he mysteriously died. Well, he died right before it was going to be released. It was very strange timing. And because he had rights to Final Cut, it sounds like after he died, they were able to eliminate 22 minutes of the movie that we've never seen or know about. But it's alleged that those 22 minutes would have been more explicit in the linkage to like what sounds like an awareness of everything that Epstein class was doing. So that like, there's just a lot of like, whether, you know, I mean, it just goes so deep. And Michael Jackson possibly, it sounds like, was aware and was actually, we have Macaulay Culkin just did a statement to say like Michael Jackson never abused me, and like Michael Jackson like took me to this island to help me get away from this other island, because they were getting, you know, there's a lot of boy victims too.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I don't want to discredit allegations against Michael Jackson in totality, but it sounds like there was also reason to believe that that was sort of designed as a way to say, look over there.
Right. Jeez, I would not be surprised. Like Michael Jackson's one of the accused that has been the hardest for me personally, just because he was so huge for me as a kid that I've really struggled to embrace the victims that were reporting that about him. I just did. Like I finally, Oprah convinced me to open my mind because I was like Michael Jackson.
Well, and I hate to say it, but Oprah,
straight up, now
she's
it's
attached
like,
to all these. Like,
I
there are
know,
no
like what
billionaires.
is going on? Well, no,
there
I
are,
know.
You know,
I've already decided.
Oprah gave us Oz.
Oz
is in these fucking things. She gave us Dr. Phil. So Oprah,
Well,
Oprah
who's the biggest grifter of all time.
and there's
Dr.
questions
Phil.
about her charity and like if potentially the orphanage, and I haven't done enough independent research to verify anything.
Well, and then here's the other weird thing too. It goes back to these Mormon crimes that are being committed. They hate Oprah, so there's like this whole layer of like, I think the white supremacy that is like the white supremacy of Charles Manson, which is like, we're going to start a race war and then we're going to rise to the top as white people and rule. Like, it's like white supremacy still, even though there's alliance with people in the black community that for whatever reason decide to go along with that or whatever. So I don't know.
I mean, and I just think that once you're a billionaire, like, your allegiance is not to your race, it's not to your gender, it's to your power and your money. And I mean, I think there's no truer form of seeing people who, like, just because they have a certain identity, they're not aligned, would be like, let's look at Pam Bondi, you know. But
God damn. So I think now, what do you think? Should I just pull some cards?
yeah, sounds great.
Let's do it. Let's
Okay.
pull cards. I'm going to actually check the chat. I don't think there's been a ton of chat activity, but just in case. I think it would really help if you ladies could get a bulletin board together and connect everything with red yarn. That's good.
That'll help my concern about perception of sanity.
Thank you, some guy and his family. Well, he's been participating actively. I appreciate your participation. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to pull some cards. And then, let's see. What do I want to pull cards about? Let's just see about the vast network. Are we going to prevail over this vast network of evil?
And not just the women that are, you know, Christy Nome and Pam Bondi.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to take the fall. Max was taking the fall, and they all should.
Yeah.
But hopefully the men behind them are too. Because that's another fascinating thing about who I think is going to take the fall. It's going to be
All the Republican women?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
straight up.
not that they don't deserve it, but I think it also just
Well, and what's with
speaks
the-
a lot to the, you know.
Was it you and I that were talking about the Republican woman aesthetic right now? Who was that?
It might have been me.
It's just like performative femininity, basically. It's like drag.
Such an extreme.
It's-
I mean, that's
it's
the
like-
irony. Is like you
Yeah.
can't, it's like you
It's
literally
like-
have these cisgender women that look like drag queens while
Yeah.
you're, you know, eliminating like any other gender identity that isn't male or female. But it's like you know, most drag queens look less theatrical
Straight
than
up.
these like crazy lip filler ladies.
Ridiculous. What do we need to know? What do we need to know about this vast cabal that's trying to keep global control? I think we're gonna win. I think the Earth wants us to win. I think the Earth is on our side.
I mean, the Earth needs us to win.
It does.
It's a pretty deck.
Isn't it beautiful? This deck was designed by Frank Duffy. Frank is a trans creator in London, I think London, in England, and I found their deck on Blue Sky and ordered it through their Kickstarter. So this is Frank Duffy's deck. It is called, mine is number 93 of 250.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
The Queer Crow Death Magic Tarot.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It was very beautiful. Frank's work is stunning. Really, they have really good energy too. So let's see here. We have 2 pages in the foundational column of this Tetractys. So this is a Tetractys geometry spread. I'm a big sacred geometry person. And we have a Page of Wands in the reverse and a Page of Swords in the upright. So to me, this speaks to surveillance and the young stage that we're all in as people that are just waking up to this, the people that have not been in the know. It's a lot of bad news. It's not good news that we're finding out from the Epstein files. It's a lot of really, it's lit in the dark. It's lit, the candle's been lit, right? Like we're finding out the truth, but it's a dark truth that we're finding out and we're observing it and we're trying to figure out about, what is the truth through all of it in the upright. We're investigating from a place of sincerity and this has been a distortion of wealth. This is 10 of Pentacles in the reverse. So that's total destruction of the material. So an abundant earth could be represented by the 10 of Pentacles, and this is here in the reverse. It's talking about the grift that we were discussing. We see clearly though now, as this is all coming out, like all of the doubt and confusion that the victims, that we all as a public and survivors, because both Nicole and I are survivors of sexual assault. And it went from like basically begging for these files to be released to now finally it's all coming out and now it's being dissected by the public that's been in the dark. That's what this 9 of Swords in the reverse represents to me, is that that's over. Our time of like confusion, what's the truth, why won't they tell us, that's over. Now the truth is coming out. And we're trying to sort through, because with the Devil card in the reverse, I feel like we're trying to sort through, like, was this a situation of good and evil? Is this power corrupting absolutely? Like what you were just saying, Nicole, like once you're a billionaire, there is no loyalty or allegiance anymore other than to your money and your power. I think that's what this is speaking to, this Devil in reverse, is like, what is this? Is this evil? Is it power abuse? Is it corruption? It's all of the above, right?
All of the above.
Yeah. And then a lot of bad news coming at us in a way that is hard to assimilate. That's going to start slowing down, is what this is saying. The worst of the onslaught this barrage is now going to start to slow down because the files have been released, I guess, basically.
And I think there are still millions not yet released.
Okay.
But I think that we are certainly, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we are in that stage for sure.
And what's really interesting to hear and see in the fax position is this King of Swords in the upright. So to me, this means that there are still some ethical people in power in the judicial system that are going to be carrying out some maybe ethical court proceedings around some of this. I don't know what that would look like even, or whatever, because I don't even know the contents of the files yet. But the King of Swords in the upright is an adjudicator, and an ethical adjudicator. It's somebody very wise, someone who's been through all of their journeys in life. They've gone through the page, they've gone through the night, they've done all their battling, right? Now they're in their station as a king, and a wise king of the air element of the mind. So they're often, King of Swords often represents a judge or a power player. And with this in the Fax position in the upright, it speaks to me that there's going to be some justice coming, especially with these two major arcanas here in the good and evil sort of shadow and conscious aspect of self or of world in general. We have two major arcanas right next to one another, and they're huge. The Judgment and the Wheel of Fortune. So fate is radically shifting, as we all know. And we're just entering the new year, right? So we have the Lunar New Year coming up here this weekend on the 16th, I think. Today's Lupercalia, Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. And then where we're headed is a place of sovereign, secure, and I don't say sovereign in that gross militia way, okay? I mean sovereignty in like the beautiful way of like we're all sovereign beings, right? And so that's where things are headed, is an energy of feeling a sense of sovereign independence from a lot of this web of deceit and confusion. And I don't know how or why that would be. I'm going to pull a couple cards about that to see. Why is that? Like what is, oh, this was the deck I was looking for. What is that going to look like? This sort of sovereign, secure, independent state that we're entering after these sort of judgment day and adjudication, changing fate, changing fortune. Can we get a glimpse into what that looks like? What is that joyful Nine of Pentacles energy? It's a feeling of safety. It's a feeling of security, kind of like what you described having that Bitcoin that you bought when you did. It's like you're more safe.
Yeah.
You feel more safe having it. Yeah. That's where the energy is headed. So let's see what that looks like. It's because this is over. It's because this person's reign of terror is over. Child in the reverse, bondage in the upright, distant future. This is over. This person's horrible reign of terror, he was a symptom, but he was the orchestrator of it all. He and Ghislaine, right? This is over with. He's dead. Mature man in the reverse. The future is where we're having our feet back on the ground and this independent sort of freedom from this horrible, it says distant future though. I don't like that. What about, I want now.
Well, we need Trump to also be this upside down.
It's not over yet. Yeah.
But it does seem like we have midterms.
Yeah.
You know, there's hope that we can get, you know, and I just think about sovereignty as a nation, like, and democracy and, you know, and the sovereignty of Venezuela and Cuba right now that are, you know, just under totally unnecessary pressure to have that sovereignty as well.
Yeah, like what does that sovereignty look like? And I'd just like to say, when we're talking about scary topics like this, like abuse, like ritual abuse, like for people on the right, this kind of talk, so I just named this deck out loud because I think I have some folks that watch my channel that are a little bit right-leaning, and they might hear a title like this and say, Queer Crow Death Magic Tarot, what's the difference between what they're talking about and, you know, if they're reading cards from something named Queer Crow Death Magic Tarot, they're a part of it. They're a part of this cabal, right? So that might be what somebody would say, right? Hearing a title like this about tarot. That's what's challenging about the times that we're in. I just have to say, because people that are power abusers like that, that's partly how they're so sneaky and good at it, is because they ingratiate themselves into communities where they can kind of blend in and be shapeshifters and take the good things from that community, sprinkle in a little bit of lies so that people don't know the truth, right? And that's what I feel I need to say about this, is that being queer is not evil, okay? Loving crows is not a demonic thing. It's a thing about loving nature and loving that crows have an esoteric wisdom to them, like ravens, about the underworld, which the underworld doesn't have to be evil. It's a part of like yin and yang, right? Like light and dark. Death is a part of life, okay? We're not talking about sacrificing people here. We're talking about honoring the cycle of life and
it
death.
seems like if that's what people are deciding to extrapolate, that they're weaponizing spirituality and language.
They are. They do, and they're good at doing that to make people scared. That's why we're able to convince people that tarot's evil, right? That Ouija is evil. These things can be evil if they're used for evil. They're good if they're used for good, just like guns. Just like, whatever. Just like, I don't know, guns is debatable maybe, but I want the right to own a gun, I'll just say.
I certainly think it needs to be more than law enforcement and white supremacists that have them all.
So, that's right. That's what I was going to say. I just wanted to name that about the title of that tarot deck, because I heard myself say it out loud, and I was like, I know.
Well, and it's frustrating that you have to preempt speech because somebody might weaponize a word in some, malicious way.
Yeah. Death is not something that I'm afraid of. I worked in hospice.
Crows are really smart.
Yeah.
And they bring gifts.
Very.
And they mourn and grieve and have death.
So any of the positive sovereignty that you want to share with us, Spirit? The end of this person's reign is coming, so that's very encouraging. I need encouraging.
The whole power structure that's upholding it, just ready to be sovereign from
rising stars. So maybe some new stars on the scene that have new takes on things that are going to bring joy back into our lives and our world after this fucking reign of terror. Endings. Love. Fake Republican women losing their power.
Great. And the lip filler just goes and just deflates inside them.
Yeah,
totally shrivel.
I mean, I just have to say, they're traitors. That's how I feel.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. They made absolutely. And the irony is they're going to be the first to take the fall if there's any public official accountable. It's going to be the women.
I know, that's what's heartbreaking. It's the same with trad wives. It's like, you guys weren't unburdened. Your pretty little heads were not unburdened. You got grifted into being a trad wife because people didn't.
They bargained with the patriarchy.
Yeah. And so, anyways, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. If you like my work, please like and subscribe. And I just want to thank you, Nicole, for agreeing to be here, for joining me, for sharing all of your knowledge and your wisdom with me, and for being my friend.
Likewise, I really appreciate being here, and I always love our conversations and the energy that you bring.
Me too. Oh, I was going to ask you one more thing, because you're from Chicago, right?
Suburb of, yeah.
Yeah. So back in October, when ICE started all their fuck shit in Chicago, what was that like for you when they were raiding apartment buildings and all that?
Well, it was interesting because my brother lives in that area, and so it was getting a lot of reports about what was going on, and obviously it's devastating to hear about it anywhere, and just kind of surreal when it was like exchanging messages with people in Chicago about what's going on with ICE, and then like being like, well, here's what's happening here in Portland.
Totally.
But it also, because it started there first, it also felt like a preview. Okay, how do I psychologically prepare? How do I start determining for myself, like, what role am I going to play? Like, I have a lot of intersecting identities. I'm white. I am a citizen, and that gives me some protection. But I have an illness that I'd be more predisposed to having a lot of complications if I'm gassed, and so and I'm visibly queer, and I'm in a larger body, and so I think it kind of, I wanted to negotiate my own role, and then it was devastating too. My brother told me a story where, like, he had gone, like, there's a Mexican restaurant in his area that had, like, it's his favorite, and so he went there just craving it, and like they had the door locked, and they were kind of checking, like, well, why are you here? Like, and my brother, frankly, he kind of looks like a cop, he dresses a little like a cop, and so they just see this kind of like white dude with his like hat on and like t-shirt, and like they were kind of questioning him, thinking like he might be ICE, and they weren't letting him in, and they're like, well, why are you here? And he was like, oh, we literally just like love your tacos, we think they're the best in town, and we just like you know, we wanted to support your
Wanted to
business,
show
and
it, yeah.
and like generally we just like are obsessed with your tacos, and they let him in. But it was just like, it was interesting to hear him, because, you know, I think like there's like this performative, I'm a Democrat, I'm a good guy, and then like I think it was like his moment of confronting like his own like privileges and his own, you know,
Sure.
and like his own, like it came really personal, where it was like, this is a business I love, and also like how am I, you know, how am I showing up, and so I think it was just interesting for me to kind of hear like that story too, and, you know, hearing about like they were really rating all the apartments, so kind of, I mean, it's just psychologically it's a lot.
Totally. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
about it too.
Yeah.
Because we were talking, I know you said you don't know that you'll really have much reason to be going back east very much anymore, since you've been out here as long as you have. And anyways, that's all stuff that
Yeah.
we'll wrap up for now. But again, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for checking out this work, and I'll see you in the next one.